What if every insult hurled at you actually made you stronger instead of weaker? Imagine you are standing in a crowded room, perhaps in the middle of a high-stakes office meeting or a tense family gathering, and someone suddenly levels a sharp, stinging insult directly at your intelligence or your character. In that exact split second, your physiology betrays you, your heart rate spikes, your face flushes hot, your palms sweat, and your ego screams at you to fight back, demanding that you retaliate and hurt them just as deeply as they tried to hurt you. Modern society conditions you to believe that you must defend your honor, that you must strike back with a witty retort or an angry defense to prove you are not a pushover. But the ancient Stoics understood a hidden psychological truth that flips this entirely upside down. The moment you lose your temper, you have just handed the leash of your mind directly to your enemy. You are no longer the master of your own soul. You are a reactive puppet dancing blindly to the chaotic tune of their disrespect. If you react with anger, you voluntarily place the collar of a slave around your own neck and hand them the chain. But what if you could neutralize their attack without ever raising your voice? What if you could use psychological judo to absorb their aggressive energy and redirect it so that they are the ones left looking foolish, exposed, and entirely out of control? Today, you are going to learn how to reclaim your absolute power using the Marcus Aurelius method. We are going to explore how Roman emperors and the greatest philosophers of the ancient world did not just ignore disrespect, but weaponized it to build an unbreakable fortress of the mind. When you are insulted, the natural instinct is to fill the air with a loud defense. But the Stoic path leads to a level of psychological dominance so profound that the person who insulted you ends up feeling like they have just thrown a pebble at a massive, unmovable mountain. True power is not about shouting the loudest or dominating a debate with aggressive hostility. It is about maintaining a chilling, untouched composure that disarms your opponent instantly. Think about it for a moment. Why do you care if someone who is irrational or miserable tries to drag you into their personal storm? An insult is not a statement of fact about your character. It is merely a confession of the speaker's own internal chaos and insecurity. It is a false mirror reflecting their own flaws, not yours. If a toddler calls you incompetent, you laugh because you know they do not understand the word. So why would you give the exact same weight to the words of an angry colleague or a bitter stranger? When you realize this, you stop playing their game. You stop defending yourself to mere noise. Throughout this journey, we will forge the Stoic shield, a tactical mindset that transforms incoming hostility into raw data for your own emotional mastery. You will learn how to deploy the tactical pause, how to weaponize calm curiosity, and how to execute the ultimate disarming agreement. You are about to discover how to look an aggressor dead in the eye and watch their assumed power crumble against your absolute tranquility. Why should you deliver the keys to your emotional kingdom to someone who cannot even govern themselves? By mastering these ancient principles, you will never hand over your peace to anyone ever again. And you will step into every room not as a reactive participant, but as the untouchable, unshakable master of your own reality. To achieve this absolute mastery over your environment, we must first completely dismantle the illusion of what an insult actually is. You have been conditioned your entire life to believe that when someone directs a harsh word at you, they are wielding a weapon that can somehow pierce your skin and diminish your value. But let us look at the cold, objective reality of the situation through the lens of the legendary Stoic philosopher Epictetus. Over 2,000 years ago, he laid down a fundamental law of human psychology that remains entirely unbroken today. He stated with absolute certainty that what is insulting is not the person who abuses you or mocks you, but your own internal judgment that their words are actually insulting. Think deeply about the literal mechanics of a verbal attack. When a jealous coworker criticizes your intelligence or a bitter relative belittles your lifestyle, what is physically happening in that room? They are simply pushing air out of their lungs. vibrating their vocal cords, and creating sound waves that travel across the space and enter your ears. That is the entire physical event. Those sound waves possess absolutely no independent power to harm your mind, your character, or your future. The emotional pain only materializes in the exact fraction of a second that you consciously or unconsciously choose to agree with their assessment. If you do not give your active consent to the insult, it remains nothing more than meaningless noise fading quickly into the background. You are the sole, undisputed gatekeeper of your mind, and an insult is simply a pathetic visitor knocking at the gate, begging for your permission to enter and cause havoc. Why in the world would you ever willingly unlock the gate for a visitor whose only intention is to tear down your fortress and steal your peace, to stop being a reactive victim? You must execute a radical shift in your perspective and become a clinical, analytical observer of human behavior. Whenever someone lashes out at you, you must immediately reframe the entire interaction. We are taught to view insults as aggressive assertions of power, but the Stoics understood them as tragic, desperate confessions of weakness. Happy, fulfilled, highly confident people simply do not spend their precious energy trying to humiliate others. They do not need to tear you down to elevate themselves. Therefore, when someone attacks you, they are actively broadcasting their own deep-seated insecurities, their unresolved pain, and their hidden jealousies to the world. They are essentially holding up a false mirror, but that mirror does not reflect your flaws. It intensely reflects their own internal chaos and misery. Once you firmly grasp this Stoic mindset shift, you stop seeing an intimidating aggressor and you start seeing someone who is emotionally unwell, someone who is drowning in their own psychological storm and desperately trying to drag you into the dark water with them just to feel a fleeting sense of relief. Would you feel deeply offended or threatened if a delirious patient in a hospital suddenly yelled at you? Of course not. You would feel a sense of calm detachment, perhaps even pity, because you recognize that their words are merely a symptom of their tragic condition, not a valid or accurate assessment of your worth. You must apply this exact same clinical detachment to the everyday insults you encounter in the corporate boardroom, at the dinner table, or scrolling through your social media feeds. When you absolutely refuse to take their bait, when you deny them the emotional reaction they are desperately starving for, you instantly neutralize their attack. You strip away their illusion of control and leave them completely exposed, holding nothing but their own toxic energy. You are no longer a participant in their pathetic game of ego. You are a dominant spectator observing a psychological phenomenon from a position of absolute, untouchable altitude. Every single time you choose calm observation over an emotional reaction, you permanently reinforce the massive stone walls of your mental fortress, proving to yourself and to them that your peace of mind is not a cheap commodity that can ever be stolen by a passing, insecure comment. Now that you have constructed your mental fortress and realized that an insult is merely a projection of the other person's internal chaos, it is time to move from defense to active neutralization. We are going to transition from the Stoic mindset shift directly into the 3 Stoic jiu-jitsu moves. These are precise, tactical responses designed to absorb the aggressive energy of your attacker and immediately use it to disarm them, all without you ever raising your voice or compromising your dignity. The first move is the tactical pause. When someone throws a verbal dart at you, your immediate biological instinct is to fill the air with a loud defense. Do not do it. Instead, stop, count to 3, take a deep breath, and look them directly in the eyes with a completely calm and neutral expression. This intentional silence is the most uncomfortable thing an aggressor can possibly experience. They insulted you because they were desperate for an emotional reaction, but by giving them absolute silence, you deny them the very fuel they need. This creates a suffocating vacuum in the room. Your unbothered presence acts as a massive mirror reflecting their own lack of control back at them. The pressure instantly transfers from you to them, and they are left looking like a foolish person shouting into an empty canyon. Once you have established dominance through silence, You can deploy the second move, which we will call the interesting deflection. Imagine a coworker blatantly questions your intelligence in front of the team. Most people would panic and launch into an angry counterattack. You, however, will simply hold your ground, give a slight, unbothered smile, and say, "That is interesting. Tell me more." This phrase is a masterpiece of psychological judo. You do not argue, and you do not defend. Instead, you step into the role of a clinical observer. By calmly inviting them to continue, you absorb their momentum and redirect it, forcing them to explain and justify their baseless hostility. You completely derail their objective. They wanted to hit you and run. But now you have trapped them in the spotlight, demanding that they articulate their own irrationality. They will inevitably stumble, backtrack, or expose their underlying jealousy, while you remain seated comfortably above the fray, entirely unaffected by their noise. Finally, if the aggressor continues their petty behavior, it is time to deliver the third move, the ultimate dismissal. Let us say someone tries to drag you into a trivial argument, mocking your methods or attempting to undermine your authority. You look at them with chilling composure and state clearly, "I do not compete in that category." On the surface, it is a polite decline, but underneath, it is a devastating assertion of absolute power. With this single sentence, you declare that you operate at a vastly higher altitude of reason and maturity. You communicate that you do not evaluate your self-worth based on their petty, miserable criteria. It is a silent victory that says you refuse to step down into the mud to wrestle with them. They are expecting a fight, but instead, they are met with a brick wall of serene detachment. They are left completely powerless, holding their toxic energy. While you effortlessly elevate yourself and protect your precious mental space, by mastering these three moves, the tactical pause, the interesting deflection, and the ultimate dismissal, you prove that intelligence and strength are never measured by who can shout the loudest. True dominance belongs to the person who can absorb the hardest verbal blow and respond with unshakable, terrifying calm. You show the world that your mind is an impenetrable vault, and that the pathetic attempts of others to tear you down are nothing more than a waste of their own breath. Now that you have neutralized their attack and left them entirely stranded in their own psychological mess, you might think the battle is over. But true Stoic mastery does not stop at mere defense. You must now take the final, most crucial step in the Marcus Aurelius method, which is transformation. We call this the revenge of excellence. When someone insults you, they are essentially trying to hand you a heavy, toxic weight. By deploying the tactical pause and the disarming deflection, you absolutely refuse to carry it. However, your physical system might still be buzzing with the residual adrenaline of the confrontation. You must now channel that friction into relentless forward momentum. Over 2,000 years ago, facing traitors, critics, and the immense pressure of ruling the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius wrote a brilliant directive in his private journal. He stated that the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Think deeply about the profound psychological dominance embedded in that single sentence. The aggressor desperately wanted to drag you down into the mud, to make you petty, reactive, and bitter. Exactly like them. If you snap back, if you lose your temper, or if you spend the next 48 hours pacing your living room and plotting a witty counterattack, they have won the war. You have become their psychological twin. You have validated their behavior by mirroring it. But when you respond to their disrespect with a chilling, focused pursuit of your own personal excellence, you annihilate their influence completely. You do not merely ignore them. You actively weaponize their negativity, using it as raw fuel to build your own empire. I want you to start imagining the person who insulted you as a free sparring partner provided to you by the universe. When you step into a boxing gym, you do not get angry at your sparring partner for throwing a punch at your head. You use their aggression to perfect your own movement, to harden your reflexes, and to fortify your endurance. Why should the mental gymnasium of everyday life be any different when that jealous colleague tries to undermine your intelligence during a high-stakes presentation? Let their petty behavior be the exact catalyst that drives you to execute your next project with absolute, undeniable brilliance. When a relative criticizes your life choices from a place of deep insecurity, let their bitter words serve as the ultimate reminder of why you chose your own independent path in the first place. You must transform their insult into raw data, treating it as a daily stress test for your emotional immunity. You look at them and realize they are trapped in a miserable loop of seeking external validation, while your self-worth is generated entirely from within your own mind. This is the ultimate realization of absolute power. Modern society conditions us to believe that power is loud, that dominance is found in the person who yells the most aggressively or gets the final word in a trivial screaming match. But look at the most commanding, successful people in the world. They do not engage in petty sidewalk arguments. They operate with a terrifying, quiet composure that speaks volumes. Their authority does not come from crushing their enemies with loud insults. It comes from their absolute, untouchable indifference to the attempts of lesser minds to bring them down. Every single time you hold your ground and refuse to be provoked, you are silently broadcasting to the entire room, and most importantly to yourself, that you are the undisputed master of your own reality. You deliberately elevate yourself miles above the noise. You demonstrate that your mental energy is an elite, highly protected resource, far too valuable to be wasted on someone else's lack of emotional control. Let them choke on their own toxicity while you walk away lighter, sharper, and exponentially more powerful than you were before they opened their mouth. Now that you have transformed their negativity into your personal fuel, you must solidify the foundation of your mental fortress so that it can never be breached. I want you to visualize your mind as a massive, impenetrable stone citadel situated on top of a high mountain. Outside the thick walls of this citadel, the world is chaotic, unpredictable, and entirely filled with people who are constantly fighting their own internal battles. When someone hurls an insult at you, they are essentially standing at the bottom of the mountain and throwing small pebbles at your massive stone walls. Those pebbles cannot even scratch the surface of your defenses. They bounce off harmlessly and fall back into the dirt where they belong. But here is the profound Stoic secret that you must absolutely master. The gates to your mental fortress can only be unlocked from the inside. No aggressor, no bitter colleague, and no toxic family member possesses the physical or psychological strength to break your doors down. The only way they can ever enter your mind and cause emotional destruction is if you voluntarily walk down from your high watchtower, unlock the heavy iron gates yourself, and invite them inside by choosing to react to their noise. Why would you ever do that? Why would you surrender the ultimate sanctuary of your peace to someone who is reckless, insecure, and miserable? From this exact moment forward, you must treat your attention and your emotional energy as the most elite and valuable resources you own, far more precious than gold, silver, or real estate. You do not hand out your life savings to every random stranger you pass on the street. So you must absolutely stop handing out your emotional reactions to people who have not earned your respect. When you apply the philosophy of Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus to your daily life, you will begin to experience a level of profound psychological freedom that most modern people will never even comprehend. You will wake up every single morning knowing with absolute certainty that your mood is entirely independent of the external world. If someone attempts to mock you or diminish your accomplishments, you will simply observe them with the calm, detached curiosity of a scientist studying a highly predictable and strange insect. You will effortlessly deploy the tactical pause, letting their anxious, desperate energy burn itself out against your terrifying silence. You will use the disarming deflection, offering an unbothered smile and calmly inviting them to explain their irrationality until they completely exhaust themselves. And when necessary, you will execute the ultimate dismissal, politely but firmly reminding yourself and them that you simply do not compete in their miserable, petty category. This is not about building a wall to hide behind out of fear. It is about building a foundation of character so strong that you can walk through the most chaotic and hostile environments on Earth and remain completely untouched. You become the calm eye of the hurricane. Let the winds howl around you. Let deeply insecure people project their failures onto you. Let them whisper. Let them shout. Let them try to drag you down into their drama. Their words are just empty sound waves vibrating through the air, completely devoid of any real power unless you give them your consent. You are the sole architect of your own reality, and you hold the only key to your inner kingdom. Guard that key with your life. Do not ever let the random noise of the crowd dictate your internal worth. Stand firm in your relentless pursuit of excellence. Maintain your chilling, untouchable composure, and watch as the world naturally bows to the person who can never be provoked. You now possess the true Stoic shield. Equip it right now. Walk into every room with unbreakable confidence, and vow to never surrender your absolute power to anyone ever again. Even after you have fortified your mind and equipped the Stoic shield, you will inevitably face a different kind of warfare. What happens when the attack is not just a single, passing insult, but a relentless, ongoing siege? Imagine you are dealing with a toxic superior at work who constantly belittles you, a deeply insecure family member who criticizes every choice you make, or the endless, chaotic noise of trolls on social media. They do not just throw one stone. They try to batter down your walls day after day. In these situations, your Stoic mastery must evolve from simple deflection into the establishment of absolute, unassailable boundaries. You must deploy advanced psychological judo to protect your energy reserves. The first advanced maneuver for handling chronic disrespect is shifting the battlefield entirely by stating, "Let us stay on facts, not feelings." In modern society, people are conditioned to use their emotions as weapons. They will try to hijack a conversation with dramatic flair, vague accusations, and intense emotional energy, hoping to trigger your defensiveness. When you respond with cold, objective rationality, demanding data over drama, you instantly strip them of their leverage. You pull them out of their chaotic emotional storm and force them onto the harsh, solid ground of reality. They cannot manipulate facts, and when they realize this, their aggressive momentum completely collapses. But what if they refuse to be rational and continue to press you, demanding explanations and trying to exhaust your patience? This is when you execute the second maneuver, a boundary so firm it leaves them entirely stranded. You simply state, "I have already said what I needed to say." Most people fall into the trap of over-explaining. They believe that if they just repeat themselves one more time, the other person will finally understand. But the Stoic knows that a toxic person is not looking for understanding. They are looking for a reaction. By calmly refusing to repeat yourself, you declare that your words have weight and your time is incredibly valuable. You stop feeding their ego and you sever the invisible string they are trying to pull you with. Furthermore, in these prolonged battles, you will often encounter individuals who demand your submission simply because of their job title or their age. Even while they treat you terribly, they expect you to bow to their authority and accept their insults as a normal cost of doing business. Here, the Stoic mind remains perfectly rigid. You silently remind yourself that true respect is earned through character, wisdom, and integrity, never demanded through force or intimidation. You treat them with basic human civility, but you absolutely refuse to grant them influence over your inner peace. Finally, for those who simply will not stop, for the loudest and most ignorant voices in the room, you must utilize the ultimate Stoic weapon, which is the complete withdrawal of your attention. You look right through them and realize, I prefer not to explain myself to noise. The great philosophers taught that we should not answer every barking dog. You do not owe your profound mental energy to a person who is vibrating at the lowest possible frequency. Silence is not a weakness. It is the most terrifyingly powerful response you can offer to someone who is starving for your attention. It proves that you operate in a realm of reason and purpose, while they are stuck in the mud of their own misery. Every time you choose not to engage, every time you let their toxic words evaporate into the empty air, you preserve a massive amount of psychological power. Let them exhaust themselves, screaming at the stone walls of your fortress. They will eventually realize that you are completely untouchable, a master of your own destiny who refuses to exchange even 1 ounce of gold for their worthless dirt. When you have successfully deployed the power of absolute silence and completely withdrawn your valuable attention from those who seek to drag you down, you reach the most profound stage of the Stoic journey. You are no longer merely defending your mental fortress. You are actively transforming the attacks of your enemies into raw, combustible fuel for your own personal growth. The ancient philosophers understood a brilliant psychological secret. Every time someone attempts to insult you, they are unknowingly handing you a free stress test for your character. Think about how a professional athlete trains. When a heavyweight boxer steps into the ring with a sparring partner, he does not get deeply offended or emotionally broken when the partner throws a heavy punch at his head. He expects the friction. He uses the aggressive energy of the sparring partner to harden his own reflexes, to study his own weaknesses, and to build an unbreakable physical endurance. Why should the mental gymnasium of your everyday life be any different? The toxic colleague who constantly belittles your ideas, the deeply insecure relative who criticizes your lifestyle or your career, and the anonymous troll hiding behind a keyboard on the internet are not your conquerors. They are your unpaid, involuntary sparring partners provided to you by the universe to perfect your emotional immunity. Once you adopt this incredibly empowering framework, you completely strip the aggressor of their intended impact. They desperately want to see you bleed emotionally, but instead, they watch you take their hostility, process it as clinical data, and use it to become exponentially sharper and more formidable. This brings us to the ultimate Stoic directive, written by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in his private journals over 2,000 years ago. Surrounded by traitors, critics, and the crushing weight of ruling the ancient world, he wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Pause and let the terrifying power of that principle sink into your mind. When an irrational person insults you, their ultimate goal is to force you to mirror their ugly behavior. They want you to lose your temper, to hurl insults back, and to become just as bitter and petty as they are. The exact second you lose your composure and strike back in anger, you have surrendered. You have validated their toxic existence by stepping down into the mud to wrestle with them. But when you respond to their disrespect with chilling, unshakable excellence, you completely annihilate their influence over your reality. You do not merely ignore their noise. You use it as a catalyst to double down on your own brilliance. If they mock your ambition, let that mockery be the exact spark that drives you to build your business or master your craft with a level of focus they cannot even comprehend. Let their jealousy remind you to maintain your absolute integrity. True dominance in any room is never achieved by the person who yells the loudest or orchestrates the cleverest verbal comeback. It is achieved by the individual who is so deeply anchored in their own self-worth that the miserable opinions of the crowd simply evaporate upon contact. You prove that your psychological real estate is worth millions of dollars, and you absolutely refuse to rent it out for free to people vibrating at the lowest possible frequency. By refusing to become what you despise, you execute the revenge of excellence. You leave your attackers stranded in their own psychological prison, holding their own venom, while you walk away completely untouched, utilizing their wasted energy to propel yourself toward an absolute, unyielding mastery of your own life. Now that you have learned to harness the hostile energy of your detractors and convert it into the solid building blocks of your own success, you must take the ultimate step in securing your psychological empire. You must completely eradicate the deeply ingrained human desire to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Modern society breeds a desperate need for external validation. We are taught to over-explain ourselves, to endlessly justify our choices, our careers, and our lifestyles to friends, family members, and even absolute strangers on the internet. But the Stoic master recognizes that explaining yourself to irrational noise is a catastrophic waste of your most valuable resource, which is your mental energy. Imagine you make a significant life decision, perhaps a major career pivot or a geographical move across the country, and someone immediately criticizes it, claiming you are making a massive mistake. Your biological instinct screams at you to defend your honor, to lay out your logical blueprint, and to desperately seek their approval. You want to make them see your vision. But why? Why do you need a spectator to validate the arena you are fighting in? The moment you try to convince a jealous or insecure person that you are right, you unknowingly hand them the judge's gavel. You give them the authority to evaluate your life. Instead, you must deploy one of the most devastatingly effective Stoic maneuvers ever conceived. When faced with uninvited judgment, you simply look the person in the eye with absolute, chilling calm and state, "Believe what you want. My life will not change." Let the sheer weight of that sentence settle into your mind. You are not arguing. You are not raising your voice. You are not attacking their character. You are simply building an invisible, impenetrable titanium wall between their opinion and your reality. You are politely informing them that their words hold zero currency in your kingdom. This response is a masterpiece of psychological judo because it completely strips the aggressor of all their leverage. They insulted you because they wanted to provoke a reaction, to make you doubt yourself, or to drag you into a chaotic debate. By offering them a calm, detached acceptance of their right to be wrong, you leave them entirely powerless. You do not absorb their toxic projection, and you do not reflect it back. You just let it fall flat on the ground. Think about the majestic indifference of a massive mountain when the wind howls against its peak. The mountain does not negotiate with the wind. It does not try to explain its position to the storm. It simply remains exactly where it is, anchored deep in the earth, until the storm inevitably exhausts itself. You must become that mountain in your everyday life. When a toxic coworker tries to undermine your intelligence, or a relative questions your path, recognize that they are simply blowing hot air. They are fighting a bitter war inside their own minds, and they are desperately trying to draft you into their miserable army. Refuse the draft. Reclaim your sovereignty. Remind yourself that your self-worth is not a democracy. It is not subject to a public vote. And it certainly does not require the consensus of the miserable. Every single time you choose to withhold your explanation, every time you refuse to defend your brilliant mind to a person who is vibrating at the lowest possible frequency, you exponentially increase your own power. You silently broadcast to the universe that you are completely untouchable. Let them hold tightly to their flawed opinions. Let them whisper in the shadows. Their words cannot pay your bills, build your legacy, or forge your unbreakable character. Walk away from the noise with your head held high, secure in the absolute knowledge that you are the sole architect of your destiny, and no insult on earth can ever breach the gates of your Stoic fortress unless you voluntarily hand over the key. As we reach the final stage of the Marcus Aurelius method, it is time to forge the ultimate seal on your mental fortress so that no external force can ever breach its walls again. You have learned how to dismantle the illusion of an insult, how to deploy the tactical pause, and how to execute disarming deflections that leave your attackers completely powerless. You have stopped explaining your brilliant vision to mere noise and started transforming their toxic energy into raw, combustible fuel for your own personal excellence. But to make this profound psychological power permanent, you must internalize the ultimate Stoic truth. True freedom is the absolute, uncompromising refusal to be a victim to anything outside of your own choices. When you step back out into the chaotic world, you will inevitably encounter people who are drowning in their own misery, jealousy, and lack of emotional control. They will try to hand you their poison. They will try to drag you down into their petty, miserable dramas, because your new calm silence terrifies them and intensely exposes their own internal chaos. But from this exact second forward, you will look at their desperate attempts with a chilling, untouched clarity. You will see their insults not as weapons that can pierce your skin, but as tragic, desperate cries from individuals who cannot even govern their own minds. Why would you ever surrender the royal throne of your life to a person who is entirely out of control? Your peace of mind is the most elite, highly protected asset you possess. It is a massive titanium vault, and the only person in the universe who holds the combination is you. When a jealous colleague mocks your ambition, when a bitter family member criticizes your independent path, or when an anonymous stranger hurls disrespect, you will no longer feel the burning rush of panic or the desperate biological urge to retaliate loudly. Instead, you will stand firm like a massive, unmovable mountain, while their words bounce off you like meaningless, lightweight pebbles. You will take a deep, slow breath, look them directly in the eyes with serene detachment, and watch their perceived power completely evaporate against your terrifying composure. You will remember the words of the great Roman emperor who ruled the known world, yet knew with absolute certainty that his only true empire was his own mind. He understood perfectly that the best revenge is simply to be unlike the person who performs the injury. By refusing to mirror their toxic, aggressive behavior, you strip them of all their leverage. You leave them holding their own venom while you effortlessly elevate yourself to a completely different category of human existence. This is not about passive, weak acceptance. It is about active, terrifying psychological dominance. You are not ignoring them out of cowardice. You are dismissing them out of absolute, unshakable strength. As you close this chapter and prepare to face whatever unexpected battles lie ahead in your personal and professional life, make a binding, unbreakable contract with yourself right now. Promise that you will never again hand over the leash of your emotions to an irrational, angry person. Promise that you will stop fighting in the mud with people who have absolutely nothing to lose and start investing every single ounce of your precious energy into building your own undeniable brilliance and legacy. The modern world is completely full of chaotic noise, but your mind is a heavily fortified sanctuary of absolute silence and control. Equip your Stoic shield every single morning before you walk out your front door. Let them choke on their own bitterness while you walk away lighter, sharper, and exponentially more powerful. Keep the heavy iron gates securely locked. Let the emotional storm rage violently outside your walls. Your life is far too valuable to be distracted by the opinions of the miserable. You are the undisputed master of your own reality, the sole architect of your inner peace, and from this day forward, you are completely, utterly, and permanently untouchable. You now hold the ancient blueprint to turn any insult into absolute power. The next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, remember that your mind is an untouchable fortress and you alone hold the key. If this Stoic method shifted your perspective today, and you are ready to reclaim your psychological dominance, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell for more strategies on mastering your mind. Drop a comment below saying I am untouchable to commit to this new path. Stay strong, stay calm, and never let the noise of the crowd dictate your reality. See you next video.